It's been a while, hasn't it, guys? Welcome to the Imaginary Conflicts channel. My name is Bob, and today we're doing the third installment of Wasson The Table, my usually monthly roundup on what I've been doing over the course of the month. Of course, I haven't actually done one of these videos since, I believe, December 2020, not including the channel update I did in January. And I haven't actually released any other videos since February. So this is the first video that I've done in, we're coming towards the end of May now, so nearly 4 months. The reason for that, I've been moving some things around in the house. As you can see, this is not where I am usually set up. So now I've migrated my painting and my hobbying up from the kitchen table into the lounge. So now I have a dedicated hobby space and I can actually eat food at my kitchen table. So that's always pleasant. But the last few months have been awfully busy. There's been a lot of things going on, both good and bad. I'll run through them quickly just so. A couple of weeks into March, a good friend of mine passed away, and that was quite difficult. Occupied me and my friends a lot. It was difficult as well because he was up in London, so I wasn't able to make it to his funeral. Yeah, so that was a kick in the teeth. My only comfort is that he was a fellow Christian, so at least I know where he's gone, and I know that I'll see him again. Moving on from that, just general life things. Work has been incredibly busy. We're picking up now as we're going into the summer, and more people are coming back off of furlough. So, yeah, we're really hitting the ground running, and it can be a bit of a struggle when you're being overworked in an undermanned department. So there's that. And then church related stuff has also been getting quite busy. I actually did a preaching series all throughout April, which, as you can imagine, took up most of my time. So when you finish doing a full day's work in the office, you come home and then you end up doing a full night's work, reading theology books and preparing speech notes every week for a month. I'm quite glad to not be doing that at the moment, although obviously it was very much an honour to do so. But that was an incredibly good thing to be able to do a sermon series, and it's an absolute blessing to be able to do that for the church. In addition to that, obviously, there's some other good things that are going on. The lockdown restrictions are starting to come to a close. At least that's what it appears to be like. So hopefully we can all get back together and start playing games again. I know that some of the YouTubers in the community have already got back to playing games, which is fantastic, and I look forward to one day joining their ranks. The other funny thing, given that I've really not been active on this channel for a while, I actually managed to, during my leave of absence, hit over 100 subscribers. Now, I believe that when I posted my last video, I was on about 78, maybe 81 subscribers. I'm currently on 112. And so by not posting anything, I've gained over 30 subscribers, which is quite impressive. Maybe I should do longer leaves of absence, huh? Maybe I should just not post anything and see how far I get. Now, I haven't actually done that much purchasing. I've been awfully busy and money's been tight, so I haven't been able to do much purchasing. I've been trying to focus more on digging through what I've already got in my collection, because Lord knows I've got an incredible amount of stuff. And yeah, so I've been painting up and dredging up things that I've had in my collection for a while. Some of these you can see in front of you here. I'll go into more detail about these items in a moment. But I did buy a few things. Obviously, I bought paints, and I've been gradually expanding my range of Games Workshop contrast paints. I really appreciate how they handle, and I've really enjoyed using them. It's made painting quite enjoyable. But I did make a couple of purchases. I'll just quickly show them off to you. They're both Games Workshop things. So the first one here is the Lumineth Realm Lords, Severeth, Lord of the Seventh Wind. Now he looks a bit like a fairy, I know, but the reason why I've gotten him is because I reckon that in the games of Dungeons and Dragons that I play, we have a group, and with any luck, we should be actually getting back together to play games in person again in the not too distant future. I thought he would be really cool to use as like a wind spirit, and or perhaps an air elemental, and so that could be quite fun to use both in RPGs and perhaps as a monster in wargaming. The other thing on that note is another Games Workshop thing, completely different mind, and that is this one, the Warhammer 40,000 Necrons Canoptech Doomstalker. Now, the main reason that I got this is because it reminds me of those Jeff Wayne's, War of the Worlds tripods. If anybody can remember the Jeff Wayne War of the Worlds musical, that was integral to my childhood, and the song Thunderchild still sends shivers down my spine every time I hear it. But I wanted to get that one largely because, again, for RPGs and perhaps for war games as well, it suited in my mind the idea of if you guys have ever played the Elder Scrolls Skyrim and you have those Dwemer or dwarf constructs that you find as you're burrowing through the mountains and dungeoneering in various old former Dwemer holds, you find these ancient mechanical constructs that are powered by magic that come to life and attack you. And the Canoptech Doomstalker there really fits the bill for my idea of what one of those should look like. So I'm really looking forward to building and painting both of those. I'm just going to quickly change the camera here, and so I can give you guys a better view of the things that I've painted. There's been a few bits that I've painted since our last video, and I'd be really, really glad to show them off to you. So just one second, I'm going to move the camera around. Okay, so the first thing, and I apologise about the shadow, I need to get a lamp set up in here. Currently, the only light that I've got is directly behind where I'd sit, so it can make painting interesting sometimes. So the first thing, of course, is that the Royal Gepsmark Reserve Infantry that, as you well know, I battled with for several months, I believe. They are now completely finished, based and everything. I still need to sort out a flag for the banner bearer, but otherwise the unit is completed. 20 of Royal Gepsmark Reserve Infantry. I just thought I'd show these to you just to prove indeed that they have been finished. Let me see if I can get the focus. There we go. So yes. But who are these? Smaller chaps. Well, these are these, but in 10mm. Yes, I've dug out a bag of Pendraken 1860s or 1870s, I think. I forget which German state they belong to, with a couple of other Napoleonic bits, and I've dug them out to use as a 10mm version of this unit here. Perhaps, or not necessarily this unit, but definitely of Gepsmark infantry units. Perhaps for when I play larger games. Obviously, I only have a 6 foot by 5 foot table, so I can't play a massive game like you would see in the Black Powder book, perhaps, where everybody's playing on an 8x6 board. But if I scale things down, then it makes things much easier to have large battles on the exact same table size. So for the sort of large-scale skirmish games, or warband scale, or however they're called these days, I can be using the 28mm forces, whereas if I want to get into more grand-scale brigade or divisional level games, I can bust out the 10mm. Now, as you can see, the front unit here is in blue to represent that they are line, and the back unit behind them is in green to show that they are light infantry. Now, these will probably end up being combined into one regiment, as it were. It really depends on what rule system I'm using, but because I want to have some fantasy things going on, I may well end up using a house-ruled version of Mantic Games' Kings of War, which is a standard kind of rank and flank mass fantasy battle game. And it might be a bit strange to use that for what is ostensibly a fantasy 1870s game, but it has all of those different fantasy racial rules, and it has all of the different special rules that you would associate with wizards and technology and various things. So it should actually be a relatively easy port. So for those large games with small miniatures, you may well end up seeing games being played using the Kings of War rule set. So there we go, the big brothers and the little brothers for the Royal Gepsmark Reserve line. Moving to the front a second, you'll see two very similar units. That's because they are identical. Each has 9 men in the unit, although in practical game terms they will only have 8. Now these are very British Civil War, Cornish nationalist, Duke of Cornwall's light infantry. That's a lot of words, I know. I'm sure that you guys, if you aren't familiar with the very British Civil War, I at some point will make you familiar with it, perhaps when I've got a few more chaps painted. There's the second unit here. So these are regular British Army infantry that have defected and joined the Cornish nationalists. And as you can see, each of these units has a Lewis gun. And there's that chap over there with his Lewis gun. Each one of them has an officer. See if it will focus on him. There we go. And there's the other one here with his old white moustache. So yeah, so I've painted up 2 units of very British Civil War infantry belonging to the Duke of Cornwall's light infantry, or I believe as they're called now, the Kerno light infantry, the ones that defected over to the nationalist side. So yes, so I'll be painting up another unit, probably an assault squad equipped with grenades, without a squad support weapon or section support weapon. And I'll also be painting up a 3-man command unit, and then that will make that force there of 3 infantry units and a command unit legal for games of bolt action. And I'll get back into that one in a moment, but I just want to quickly come over here and show you my most recent painting project, which I literally finished today. Put the last bit of paint on them this afternoon. Now these, I'm not quite sure what manufacturer these are. They're obviously dwarves, and they've obviously got muskets with pith helmets, which gives them this nice quasi-19th century vibe, which is what I'm all about, really. I've painted them up in, well, some quite bright colours, actually. So this has been very, very contrast heavy. It comes out more pink in the camera footage, but it's more of a sort of a light purple. I used the Games Workshop contrast paint Magos Purple, 2 coats to paint their, I suppose, their jackets. The yellow effects was just 1 coat of Iandan yellow, again another Games Workshop contrast paint. Skeleton Horde contrast paint for the pith helmets, because that already worked so well on these Royal Gepsmark infantry. And then, yes, just a couple of other bits. Cygor brown contrast for the wood effects on the musket. And then the rest was just a variety of whatever paints I had hanging around. Some gold, some metal, some browns for the belt and that sort of thing. And yes, I think that they've turned out quite nicely. I started these on Friday evening and I finished them on a Tuesday afternoon. So I think that's actually the quickest turnaround I've ever had on a unit of infantry in my life, given that the Royal Gepsmark chaps took about 3 months. The first unit of Very British Civil War DCLI took about 2 weeks. And these chaps took about 4 weeks because I lost motivation halfway through. And I only finished these relatively recently as well. So I'm just going to quickly pan out and show you. Once it focuses, there we are. Now, not including those little 10mm chaps in the corner there, this is, in front of you right here, 50 miniatures. Now, if you guys remember at the end of my Wasson The Table for December 2020, I said that my New Year's resolution was to get 100 miniatures painted by the end of the year. And I'm already halfway there, and the year isn't even halfway through yet, so that bodes very, very well. So I'm hoping to continue plugging on with this. Now, I'm just going to return this to the camera stand again, and we'll keep on talking about perhaps why I have such a bizarre mix of soldiers in front of you here. Now, I hear you saying, Bob, why the odd mix of miniatures? You know, you've got Imaginations, you've got Imaginations fantasy stuff, properly fantasy stuff. Very British Civil War. This is all quite niche. Why don't you just paint Space Marines like everybody else? And well, dear listener, the reason for that is because these Very British Civil War units here. Very British Civil War is actually my main game that I play at my games club, which is very bizarre, but there's a small coven of us that sit in the corner murmuring about tweeds, smoking pipes, and rolling dice in anger while we play through the Very British Civil War. And I really got quite sick and tired of, like with everything else, playing games with unpainted miniatures or badly painted miniatures. So a few of these did go through the paint stripper before I proceeded, and so that is now the core, as it were, of a bolt action legal Very British Civil War force. Now, usually we would use the Very British Civil War went the day well rules, but as our collections expanded, we found that that game got increasingly more bogged down the more units that we added to it. One of the last games that we actually did before the lockdown was a big three-player bash with three different armies, quite fair sized. Playing went the day well, and it bogged down incredibly quickly. We played about 3 turns, I think, before we just lost interest with the game, which was a real shame. And so over the lockdown that's occurred in last year, we've all picked up copies of Bolt Action Second Edition. I know that they've just announced a Bolt Action Third Edition. I think. I'm sure that that'll be interesting, but obviously my main focus is playing Bolt Action Second Edition because that's what we've all got. And so I've got forces here of like pure Cornish nationalist, DCLI forces, so regular Cornish nationalists, as it were. One of my friends is collecting a socialist militia, and another is collecting just really a gaggle of mercenaries. And I do have some forces that I'm going to use paint up as royalists as well. They just need to be assembled and painted like everything else. But the imagination stuff that you can see in the back here, so that would be the Royal Gepsmark Reserve Infantry and these dwarves, which I'm taking to call the Guardia Imperial because they have a much more swarthy complexion than the pale German-esque Gepsmarkers, and their bright and vivid colours makes them look like an Imperial Guard. So the reason why I'm painting up those is because I mentioned in the past that I did want to do an Imaginations campaign, and well, I really need to get painting miniatures if I want to be able to do that. And so, after the ordeal that was the Royal Gepsmark Reserve Infantry, I've decided to wait patiently until the Perry twins release their Franco-Prussian War Prussian line infantry, because that would be much easier to paint. I also really like the look of the Prussian military uniform in the late 1860s and the 1870 to 71 war. And I think that they would look absolutely perfect as Royal Gepsmark line infantry, with these models here being pushed back into a reserve. So they wouldn't necessarily be the best troops, and you can see that because they've got the outdated equipment. The dwarvish Guardia Imperial, I'm imagining, would probably at the moment be almost like a mercenary unit, because I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the manufacturer of those models or who that manufacturer is. I've had these models for several years tucked away in a box, and they've always been with me as I've moved around different places. And I don't know who manufactured them. I'm pretty sure that they're not Alternative Armies Flintlock, because while the sculpts are a little bit chunky, they're not quite as rugged, I find, as the Alternative Armies sculpts can be. So I don't know who they belong to, so until such times as I can either find more of them or models that will match them, my Imaginations 1870s Dwarf Army, which is such a niche thing to have, is probably going to be at a bit of a standstill. So I'll be looking at other ways to expand. I'm already looking at a box I have of American Civil War Confederate infantry, and thinking of painting those up as another army, because that should yield me at least a couple of relatively easy to paint regiments. I do have a couple of other projects hiding in the background, but I'll do that in a separate video. I'll talk to you about those in a separate video. I'm still planning on doing my world building series, but I've decided that I'm going to roll that one into the Imaginations campaign series. So while that might still yet be a while off, hopefully by the time I start to do this world building series, I can start with a pure world building focus and then do more about sort of the map generation and where you place settlements and how empires get formed, and then go on into a war games campaign. Now, I actually have something which I'm hoping is going to aid me in that, in addition to a variety of different books that cover war games campaigns, either through previous iterations of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, like the General's Compendium, or indeed just campaign elements that you find in the back of most rulebooks. I also have the following. Hang tight. I have the following: The Solo Wargaming Guide by William Sylvester. Now, I've been really quite inspired by The Joy of Wargaming, that YouTube channel, and he's currently into his second solo wargaming campaign in a black powder setting, which he resolves battles with 2mm forces, which is quite impressive, really. And so with his videos, that I absolutely love, I watch them every time as soon as they release. I thought, I want to get my hands on that book. So I got my hands on that book, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what I can do, with that system and the other rules systems that I have in the background to make an interesting solo war games campaign set in this fantasy imaginations world, and hopefully it'll be something that you guys enjoy as well. So yeah, so what I really need to do is just continue painting, because obviously to play a miniature war games campaign you need miniatures. So my painting will continue apace for the various projects that I've got going on. On that plus, actually, the amount of time that I've been able to dedicate to painting has increased in this last month, now that I'm no longer doing or either a variety of different social causes or preaching in church. I've been able to increase the amount of time that I can paint from about 2 hours per week to about 8 hours per week, which, praise God, that's absolutely brilliant. It's been really, really nice to have the opportunity to sit back and relax and just, put on a podcast or put on a live stream and just crack on with painting. And Games Workshop contrast paints, I'm not a massive fan of Games Workshop. I used to be a while ago, but not so much anymore. But their contrast paints are just absolutely wonderful. They've made painting, well, quite an enjoyable experience, which for many, many years, painting used to be the part of the hobby that I hated the most. And I still think that playing games is more entertaining to me than painting. But over this last year, not being able to game with anybody, painting has become sort of my lifeline to the hobby, in addition to reading the books. And so I've really, really come to enjoy and appreciate painting, and that's been really wonderful. And so now here I am with 50 miniatures painted and completed, out of my New Year's resolution total of 100. And we're not even halfway through the year yet. So this is incredible. This is more models than I've painted in, well, the last many, many, many years. I can't even remember the last time I painted this many models, let alone within this space of time. Within a 5 or 6 month bracket, painting 50 models for me, I think, is unheard of. So, yeah, I'm going to call it quits on that one. Let me know what you guys are up to. Let me know how you guys are progressing with your hobbies. I do intend to be getting back into doing slightly more regular videos, hopefully. Hopefully nothing goes too crazy. I know that obviously the summer's coming up and we'll be able to see each other again. And so I will be away on holiday, seeing my family, who I haven't seen for a year and a half at this point. But apart from that, I am looking forward to doing more videos for you guys, because I do enjoy making these videos. It's really good fun. And I really enjoy chatting to you guys, in the comments and in the Discord groups and whatnot. It's a real joy, and I've missed it. I've missed being able to chat to you guys. So before I just continue wittering on, I'm going to call it quits here. I hope that you guys have absolutely wonderful evenings, and I will see you in the next one. God bless everybody. Cheers.